And in a minute, I'll be able to give you a link. So that, or rather not even the link, if you go on your Facebook to growgreat.tv, I'll give you the URL here. Stand by, good sir. I'll give you this. Once you go to that link, you will be able to share that directly. And I've got some copy here for you as well. If you want, you can just fill it, copy and paste and fill in whatever you want. That's also in the Zoom chat.
Got it.
Meanwhile, I can start sharing on my platforms. Boom, boom, boom. Sharing on my timeline.
How do I share that, D? That I can see that we're sort of starting and we're live. How do I share the post?
So just bottom right, hit the share icon. So you know where it says like, comment, or share. If you're on the Facebook page, just hit share, and then you can share onto your timeline.
Here we
and
go.
onto whatever pages you want. Sharing on my timeline. It's weird hearing ourselves.
That I can see that we're sort of starting and we're live. How do I share the post?
So just bottom right, hit the share icon. So you know where it says like, comment, or share. If you're on the Facebook page, just hit share, and then you can share onto your timeline.
Here we
and
go.
onto whatever pages you want. Sharing on my timeline. It's weird hearing ourselves.
Right.
I can see that it's sort of starting and we're live. How do I share the post?
So just bottom right, hit the share icon. So you know whenever you're ready, you can just turn off the there we go.
You just hit share, and then you can share onto your timeline and onto whatever pages you want.
Beautiful. In the meantime, I can see we've got a few people joining us already. Do us a favor, please, everyone. If you are watching this and you can hear us and you can see us, do us a favor while Phil and I jam. Drop us an emoji, whether it's an ear emoji, a fire emoji, whatever emoji you choose, just to let us know that you can hear us, you can see us. We got 7 minutes before we start. I haven't caught up with Phil in a minute. So, and this is a man that I hold in really, really high regard. I shared a post yesterday talking about this. Every time I catch up with Phil, I leave feeling wiser and smarter and clearer than before I enter the conversation. So I'm hoping to be able to have an hour full of that. Joshua Breetag, what's going on? Booyah, baby. Good to see you, Josh. Josh is coming on the show pretty soon too, so I'm super, super excited. And by the way, any one of you, I know that a lot of people watching this show tend to be from the e-commerce world or from direct response. If you are running a startup, if you know someone that is in the world of tech, raising capital, dealing with boards, investors, any of that other stuff, this one is going to be for you as well, for sure. To give everyone some context, and I'll be able to do this before we when we go live as well. I'll be able to talk about how we first met back at Mumbrella all those years ago.
Man, that feels like a long time ago.
That feels like January feels like a lifetime ago. It is nuts. How's the fam doing anyway?
Yeah, pretty good. Pretty good. I mean, homeschooling and building a company.
Oh. Yeah,
it's a special. It is super special.
If you guys watching know anyone here that are parents that are also entrepreneurs, boy, are we gonna be able to jam about that too.
Hell yes.
How old are the girls now?
5 and 7.
Getting up there, man. Time zooms by. It's crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy, man. It is, but it's good. It's good.
Yeah, absolutely.
How are your family, man?
Family's doing good. Finn just got a bunch of A's on his report card, which he was hoping for because he's trying to get into the IB program next year. His high school his high school offers the IB program, so he knows that this year's the year to get grades to be able to qualify, and he feels really validated. I think that the work he's putting in is actually paying off. It's nothing worse than trying to bust your ass and not be able to get it.
I'm hearing you, man. I am hearing you. It's good though, right? Because the girls have got IB at their school, and it's already kicking off really, really hard.
Wow.
So it's good. I mean, it's good. It's good for them. I think it's a much better way of doing learning anyway, right? So it's good.
It is. It's a really different philosophy, and I mean, even from an international transferability standpoint, because you start talking ATAR and all that, so many international universities might not.
They just don't get it.
Understand, which was the same issue I had when I first moved to Australia. They're like, they wanted me to do a TOEFL or like an English language to prove that I spoke English, and I'm going, I'm speaking with you right now. I don't understand what the issue is. And they're like, well, you're from Singapore, so.
Are you talking about? Yeah.
It's crazy.
I get it.
Yeah, it is nuts.
Are you keeping healthy?
Well, trying to. I completely came to a screeching halt 3, 4, 5 weeks ago. Started running again this week, and you're out of shape when your legs are sore from a jog.
Yeah, that's true. I've been operating at the other end of the spectrum, and just trying to keep it all clear. And it's been going okay, but I got to tell you, the body is not holding up like it used to.
I hear you, man.
It's hard.
You got to work twice as hard to get half the gains.
Yeah, but still making it look good. So that's all that matters.
Totally. We got Joshua watching us live going, anyone got a remote babysitter? If I crack that, Josh, I think it might just be a $1 billion idea.
Yeah, like tomorrow. Yeah.
just AI, plugging AI into babysitting. We're disrupting the babysitting landscape.
Yeah, babysitting, man. And it's something, right? Because you want to spend time with your kids, and it's actually remarkable if you can be mindful about being with your kids while you're teaching them or being with them. Like, it's amazing, but it's very hard to break yourself away from like just the world, right? I'm not talking about looking at your phone. I'm just talking about how your mind is processing every play. Hard to get away from that.
Yeah, for sure. It's just really fascinating times, and what the situation is forcing to the forefront in terms of conversations, in terms of empathy, in terms of parenting, in terms of, like, it's crazy. I mean, the number of people that are sending their kids back to school this week here in Australia just because of the restrictions starting to lax up. It's like, it makes me kind of wonder, okay, well,
be careful.
Yeah.
It's like even in biotech, right? Like we're waiting the second wave and the third wave and
same
the things that come up, right? Like it's not yet a foregone conclusion, but there's enough evidence in the world to say that you need to be really, really careful about how you do the next set of stuff. I mean, be with people, but now you've just got to don't forget that this is not a weekend storm, right? This is like a blizzard.
Absolutely. Man, I can't wait to jump in. We've got 20 seconds before we go live. This is gonna be good. This is gonna be so good. I am pumped.
It's gonna be good.
I am pumped. In
Hey,
fact, sorry, what?
We're wearing pants. Don't worry about it. It's fine.
I know, right? All right, everyone, we are jumping on. Welcome to another episode of the Growth and Greatness Show live. I cannot wait to kick off today's episode. We have Phil HSC, like he is very popularly known, Phil Hayes St. Clair. Now, Phil and I have a very interesting history. We actually first met at a pitch event in Sydney, and I'm not gonna talk too much. I just want to throw straight over to Phil, but before that, I really do want to at least introduce him properly. So Phil is a husband, a father of girls, and a serial entrepreneur with grit, resilience, and heart. He truly embodies that. Each week, he shares practical advice on his own show and his own podcasts, as well as his own community, from building 4 companies to help people create momentum, build products that people love. And Phil calls this being in motion, something that we're definitely going to drill into today. So all these resources that Phil has built, on top of, by the way, being a biotech startup CEO and co-founder, he started as Phil's side hustle, but have grown into 100 podcast episodes, 350 plus blog posts, and many lessons learned. And through today, and hopefully after today, you might be able to go to those resources and be inspired to go to those resources. Hopefully they may inspire you to help you learn faster wherever you are in your entrepreneurial journey. Today, Phil is the CEO and co-founder of Drop Bio, personalized health biotech venture based on the predictive potential of blood, which is so super cool. And previously, he built AirShare, the world's first audio recognition and interaction technology for radio. On top of all that stuff, Phil is also an ambassador at Aspiring Rare Birds and Soldier On, where Phil mentors over 40 entrepreneurs and has represented Australia twice, by the way, as a national national triathlon team and as an Army infantry soldier. So there's a mouthful right there. The list just keeps going on. Let's not wait any longer. Let's throw it over to Phil. Phil, thank you so much for taking the time out of your extremely busy day and week to be able to come here and spend time with us.
Hey, D, it's awesome. And I can't remember exactly what I thought when we were standing in that queue together in that pitch competition, but it was one of those things where I thought, you know what, you look as nervous as I do. I think we should just have a conversation, chill each other out, and it's all going to be fine. And it was. And man, what a history after that. Fantastic.
That was 2014.
It was. And the good news is that we've gradually gotten, like wine, better with age, I think.
Yeah, I think we'll leave that to the others to judge for sure. As long as the wives think so, I think that's what matters the most.
It's important. It's important they think so. Yeah.
Absolutely. And definitely from a knowledge and a wisdom standpoint, absolutely, just because of the experiences that we've had since then till now, and which is why I love the opportunity to have entrepreneurs just like you on this show called the Growth and Greatness Show anyway, because only through so much adversity and learning from that adversity can you be on your path to growth and be on the path to greatness in the first place, right? So I'm just really excited that you're here. I'm just like busting with it.
There are some. I have these favorite people, and it's not putting too fine a point on it by saying that you're without doubt one of them, because you meet a lot of people in this game, right? You meet so many different types of investors. You meet huge amounts of customers, partners, team members, board members, and just all the people that live in startup and then venture building and company development. And there are some that you just naturally magnetize to because they're willing to listen. They're willing to sort of help you be a bit vulnerable in the stuff that you need to try and work out. and they're also just, they know, right? That they sort of know what it's all about and how difficult it is. And over time, I think you collect like a subset of people that become really important in your journey because they get it and because they're there and because they know that it'll come out in the wash. And I think this is really super important, because all the stuff that you do, all the stuff that I've done in, content creation isn't because I'm trying to market. It's because I just need to get what I've learned out of my head. And I figure that there will be at least one person on this planet who might benefit from that. And that's just kind of the basis for why, I think you do it, why I do it. If something good comes of it, like so be it. That's great. But for me, I always find that I get so much more out of conversations with other founders just by writing a weekly blog post. Doesn't have to be long, but it's got to be valuable. Like all of those things which seem like something else to do. I was saying to someone yesterday, 2 weeks ago, I didn't have a chance to get my blog post written on the Sunday morning when I traditionally ship it. And I just remember feeling angry, right? Because it was one of those things that of every single thing that is not controllable, if you think about the stuff that is controllable, for me, the one thing that I can absolutely control is whether I get off my ass and publish a blog post every week on my blog and feel that sensation of pressing publish and just saying delivered. Because
Yes.
like how many weeks and months go by before you actually take a step back and realize that there were a few things that went pretty well. You were running so fast you forgot to clock them, but you now have a chance in this one thing every week to develop like a tempo and a discipline around that. I find that really, really important. So yeah, it's good fun. It's funny to look back after all these years. I started writing in 2008, and I don't think I started releasing stuff till about 2014. And so it's been a bit of a journey, but I love it. And I take my hat off to all the people that have been, religiously writing a blog for, 15, 20 years, like Fred Wilson every day for like 20 something years. It's just it's incredible.
It's it's a feat, absolutely. You brought up a really good point, which serves up the perfect segue, which is out of all the things that live within the realm of our control, the times that we're living right now are so far outside of our control by way of policymakers are making decisions that we then have to live up to. And the pandemic is moving in whatever way, shape, and form that it moves. And also at the same time, the mass populace are deciding to do things that we can't control. We can opt in and opt out. Out of the things that you can control, or we, I guess, as entrepreneurs can control, like what have you been doing during this time to be able to go apply a mindset of where can I steer my ship as CEO of my company, or where can I help the entrepreneurs that I mentor steer their ship in these times?
Look, I'll start with how I think about it and then practically what I've ended up doing with people. But areas like times like this in history are like the playpen for entrepreneurs, right? There is so many things falling apart and people getting paralyzed by things that are real, right? And are practical to them. But when I sit back and I look at this, like I am genuinely fascinated by how behavior has shifted in some areas, how it's changed in areas where I never expected it to change, where there are people making decisions which are really fascinating decisions. And then you sort of, if you were to be sitting up in like the International Space Station, right, and seeing the puzzle pieces move, like there is some once in a lifetime insight to be gained by how leadership is playing out, how even industries are working, even small parts of countries are working, and just how the human spirit is prevailing for the most part through a lot of this. Like I think about that and I just go, okay, so let's start talking opportunity, right? Like I can't help but think about that. Now, there's a reality in that when you go from what can I see and what can I do to what actually is real for me to do right now for my company. Like for us, the second principle beyond being optimistic and just being very, I guess, invested in determining what the opportunities are, is to think really carefully about, how do you go where the suck is, right? Which is another way of sort of saying, where are the customers, who are the people that are paying, why do they care, what's their pain point, right? The classic sort of painkiller versus vitamin. When I look at this, particularly in biotech, yes, we have some really fascinating work that we're doing that is applicable to the early warning of the onset of chronic disease like cancers, things that we think will collapse the early warning period from what frankly doesn't really exist now to helping people understand years in advance that they're developing a cancer that they won't see symptoms of for 2 to 3 years down the track. So that's profound and really interesting. And the same sort of science we're looking at also applies to women trying to fall pregnant, women just trying to get back into shape and feel good about themselves after they've had kids. And they're really important things just generally. But then when you turn around and sort of go, well, where's the suck? The suck is COVID-19. And right now the suck is, well, how are you going to play a role? And it was funny, like 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, some stories came out in the UK press about the government going to acquire a finger prick blood testing sort of kit to tell you whether you were COVID positive or not. And so we deal in finger prick blood, and my phone rang off the hook for like a week with suggestions, comments, demand around, so when will drop be available to do this? And the interesting thing is, like, our biology doesn't go anywhere near COVID and virology. But what we did realize was, we play the long game. We sample over time, and we can tell things over time. And so we proposed to government this notion of, how could we help you who are working unbelievably to try and support nations? How do we help you see around corners, right? When everyone gets fatigued and you're trying to work out what's going to happen next, how can we play that role? Because we pride ourselves on early warning. So we sort of pivoted towards that. And the message in this, which is tied up in all of it, is, look, there was a time when deals in government, deals with large institutions would take years, right? And huge cycle times. When you ask the right question, those deals are being done in weeks, right? And it is absolutely unheard of. But the thing that will stop people from doing that is thinking, well, actually, government works like this. Universities work like that. Old school institutions just work slow. I got to tell you, when you ask the right questions, even just say, hey, listen, would you be open to this? Which is the classic sort of question, which I know you are fantastic at, right? It's like, what if we just did it this way and putting it out there? There is huge momentum to be made just in that question alone. And I would just say to anyone listening, for the love of God, ask the question, right? Because now is the time. If you've got something that's even on the periphery that you can create value from for people that are in different sort of large scale institutions that are struggling, like, now is your time to play. And I think it's just a really fascinating time in life. I mean, I've never worked as hard as I am at the moment, right? Like, my days are super long, as is many, many people who are parents, others who are working, trying to keep their companies surviving, raising and preserving capital, hiring, still having to fire people, all these sort of, the quagmire of building stuff, that's still happening. And so I'm not unique in that respect, but there is a huge amount of opportunity out there, like a massive amount. And I think if you get a good night's sleep and you wake up the next morning with that attitude, you can start to see things which are vastly different to the day before.
Do you see that window? Do you see that window closing anytime soon because of the economic ramifications? Do you see it lasting for a while, or do you see this being a new world order where that opportunity is, it's only upward trajectory from here? And this is such an opinion piece because it's a who knows at the end of the day, of course, having that caveat.
I think that people are trading on hope that this is going to be a super quick thing, right? So we've sort of absorbed what in Australia, 3, 4, 5 weeks of sort of version of isolation. We're still able to get out. We're still able to exercise. You can go shopping. You can, even exercise in pairs. I know that's been relaxed this week, so it's different here. But what we're dealing with is not a flu, right? It's not a common cold. It's people sort of forget what history tells us about how difficult it was to contain things like the cold, right? Or just influenza. It took a lot of time. Now, technology is a lot better now, but we're just hoping that by the end of a weekend, like Monday will come, shops will open, people will go back to work, and it's all going to be fine. And I think there is, a view that would be great, and we would all love that to be the case. But every indication that I'm seeing right now says expect waves to be happening, expect a bunch of companies to do quite well, expect a number of companies to close, and that's fine, right? That it's a really unfortunate reality, but it's going to be what it's going to be. But the best thing you can be doing if you're in the situation where you're leading a business, you're growing a business, your co-founders, is just to be talking really, really I guess just being very transparent in the communications with each other about how it is that you say, this is how I'm seeing it play out. Because the worst thing that will tend to happen, when people come under stress, the aperture closes, people start to sort of internalize a lot of what's going on, find it really difficult to sort of get it out there. And that becomes super problematic when you've got co-founders or a management team that are looking to you for a point of leadership, even if the leadership is shared because there are co-founders. You've sort of got to have a range of conversations that allow you to bounce off each other, because you'll end up galvanizing around some perspective. And that's important because that perspective will sort of infect the rest of the people around you. I think when it comes down to how we're seeing it, we're just bracing for, a 24 to 30 sort of month kind of process, which is going to see a whole range of services come under stress. And we've already seen that, the world and the supply chain around the world is remarkably feeble, right? It's a very immature sort of system. And, I think people started to panic a little when they sort of started to walk into a Woolworths or a Coles or some other sort of supermarket, and they couldn't find basics like flour on the shelf, right? Like there were some things, I think that started to hit home for people. And I really think we're in for a bit of a long haul here. And that's speaking sort of on a medical and biotechnological basis. There might be some things that kick back pretty quickly. But if you're in Australia and you're in tourism, if you're in education, if you're sort of in those industries, which are hallmark industries that we've currently sort of seen, there is going to be a lot more pain before there's any kind of real sort of upside, because I'm not sure the borders are going to open freely for some time to come. There'll be some starts and fits and starts around sort of the passport idea about people sort of, are you COVID negative? Testing will obviously increase, but then the question is, we don't quite know yet if you are, you achieve predictive immunity by the time you've had it once. Right? There's some interesting things coming out of Oxford, which sort of suggested there are 3 strains of COVID-19. And there's just so much that we are yet to know about this, that we just got to sort of brace ourselves and just enjoy the situation, because I think for the most part, there's a new wave of kindness and humanity, which is prevailing, which otherwise wouldn't have happened. And, I got to say, the world can always do with a bit more kindness.
Yeah, absolutely. And how it's that piece right there has been very pleasantly surprising for me, because my thesis at the start of this whole thing was this was going to cause people to alienate one another, because it's an invisible enemy and anyone on the street could have it, which then meant it was more so separatism rather than cohesion. And somehow, yet the human spirit, time and time again, proves to be that surprising, where we are now together, more together than we've been, even though we're apart. That was a really surprising thing for me, for sure, because I turned over to my wife and I said, honey, this is going to cause people to, it's almost going to be like a zombie thing. Are you a zombie? I don't know. I can't tell, so I'm going to stay away.
Yeah. And look, I've seen parts of that. There've been some behaviors I've seen in some random strangers which have genuinely surprised me. But unlike just about every other event that has occurred in our lifetime and probably our parents' lifetime, this is universal, right? Like there's no one who's not affected by it. This isn't a world war where our country isn't engaged in warfare. It's not a situation where a financial instrument caused harm to a particular subset of the population. Like this is sort of universal, and there's something quite galvanizing about that. There'll be actors that will try and take advantage of it. There'll be people who don't really know what to do and sort of freak out. And as a friend of mine said recently, like there'll be a lot of time where people won't know how to react. They'll hold it together. They'll fall apart at different times. And it's all treating us a little bit differently to what I think we probably expected. But I think just hunker down, just expect it to go for a long time. If this resolves quickly, then fantastic. But sort of play the long game.
I hear you. And you mentioned before, not only play the long game just then, but you mentioned before the fact that you are applying a 24 to 30 month outlook to this. Is that something that you have done with the rest of your team? And should other entrepreneurs be doing that?
So the context here is important. So, we deal in healthcare, and there's a lot of moving parts, both from, the point at which discoveries are made all the way through to making them products and commercial and effective and safe. And so there is just a longer timeline with the kind of industry that we work in. But what is sort of fascinating for us is that it requires more capital to do what we do, as opposed to maybe a consumer technology venture, which has sort of a traditional sort of package that you go through, like seed, Series A and B, and different stages of traction. For us, we're looking at, is this point in time in history the true inflection point to go to, really, really genuinely good personalized healthcare and distributed healthcare and all the things that come with that, right? Telehealth. If you talk to a number of GPs, their productivity has gone through the roof because they can engage with people more efficiently. They have to develop a different sort of skill set to how they're engaging with their patients, but it's just vastly different, right? And telehealth was waiting for an event like this to actually become relevant enough for that to be the case. And that's just one example.
Yes.
When you look at the way that people would be taking out scripts for medications and getting them delivered, right? Like the delivery networks now are having to be stressed to deal with a whole bunch of things, but how do you create sort of mission critical delivery for things like, essential medications? And so all of these questions, which have been worked on by entrepreneurs around the world for years now, are sort of coming to a floor, which I think is just brilliant. But these pieces, because of the different dogma that sit inside different parts of healthcare, they need to be sort of unrusted and sort of greased a little bit to sort of give some flexibility, and for the people at the helms of those organizations to go, what, there is opportunity here. Like we didn't think about this before, but the key thing for everybody right now, it's a new game. It's a new game, new rules. And that's kind of exciting, because the rules you might think about creating might not be right, but they're vastly different to the things that you previously thought were barriers to entry. Right. And I find that really, really exciting.
And how, I mean, give us an idea, because you, just by, from speaking for these 20 minutes or so, you apply your worldview to the startup and to navigating business with a very unique lens.
Right.
And naturally, with the sales cycle and the product cycle and go-to-market cycle with your with the company, that forces a very unique lens as well. It requires a 24 to 30 month outlook in a lot of regard. Where do you think that that's beneficial for entrepreneurs across as an average, as general broad stroke across the board, to have that ability at least, or to have the dialogue with their team to say, hey guys, let's not stare at next quarter and whether we're going to hit KPI, but let's perhaps, even though we are a direct-to-consumer product, even though we might be a service-based business, even though we might not have investors to answer to and a fiduciary responsibility, should they also gain the benefit, or at least challenge themselves to look out 12 months, 24 months, and project out what might happen?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that is possibly the most difficult to do at the best of times is to reevaluate the thesis that you had going into the venture you currently run, right? So you think you identified a pain point, you built some stuff, you got some traction, people started to pay, things are going along pretty well, and you're sort of, if you're in a SaaS sort of play, you're sort of always on cohorts, retention, acquisition, how does that work, and just kind of continue to optimize for that. And now the real question is the thesis you entered the business with still sound? And the only way that you'll know that is by, in a very wholesale way, going back and just talking to your customers. And the best part is they're doing nothing anyway, right?
Yeah.
Go and talk to them as many as you can, because what you need to try and uncover here is the pain point 2.0 for your context, right? So whatever it was you started, you've got to find the second one now, because it's not going to be the same, right? Psychologically, the shift that is going on inside people's minds in terms of what to prioritize, what to engage, what gives people pleasure, what gives people anxiety, that is so vastly different to just 4 weeks ago. So if you have a product that you're building, if it's a mature product, if you've got multiple product lines, if you've got, the same product, gold, silver, bronze, whatever it is that you've got, you now have to, in a wholesale way, point your entire organization back towards the people that are paying or who are your followers that you consider to be the closest to you, and have a conversation that says, hey, listen, we're thinking about doing things differently. What would you like us to do, right? And being very open about just listening to the anxiety that goes on, that you could feel inside calls. And I think it's really interesting as well, because you could hear people instantly say, let's just generate some surveys, let's start doing a whole bunch of sort of virtual assessment about how people are feeling about stuff. But I'm not sure that's going to cut it, right? Because the channels that you ordinarily would go out to people with, in a highly virtual environment, email, messaging, like, people are getting smashed with that stuff, right? So it's got to be sufficiently different. And for most people who are not sort of in early venture, the opportunity to have a conversation with somebody, because there is an isolation and a pseudo loneliness that's at play, actually becomes the most amazing product development opportunity ever, right? And so the notion of being able to get to people, have that conversation, bring all that feedback back in, and say to a team, listen, this is sort of a wartime situation now, right? That we have survival to deal with, and we have insight discovery to make. These are our two things, because one will propel the other. If we discover something which is really, really good that we can pivot to, and we can convince investors who are still around to sort of support us on that, or if we have to go into debt, which is a large emerging thing out of the valley right now, then so be it. Because once things come back, you will be in a much stronger position. I think the thing that I'm most concerned about is when I hear founders say, we're going to cut, we're going to preserve our runway, and now we have 12 or 15 months, or maybe even up to 18 months of runway in the bank, and then we'll go and raise money in February, March next year. And you sort of go, too late, right? Like, you have to be able to say to people right now who are in this mode of, how do we create the future? You need to be able to capture them now with really compelling narratives about what your pivot might look like in order for you to grow, because every other venture is going to sort of think they can sort of deal through the year, get to sort of before Christmas, after Christmas, and then go, we're going to go back to market. And guess who else is going to be out in market? Every other goddamn venture that had the same point of view, right? And this is the problem with how people have sort of been told to think about survival of a company. It's been decrease the costs, just survive, skeleton staff, hope it all works out. I get that, and I think there's an element of that. But the more important thing is, how quickly do you quadruple your ability to sense and respond to the people that are closest to you, your customers and users? This is where I think it's where it's going to be won and lost. And I'm kind of hoping to see more ventures really over-rotate on that.
That's such an amazing and powerful insight, which is so befitting of exactly why the headline for today's episode is finding that rainbow in the storm. Are you seeing, and you mentor a lot of entrepreneurs, are you seeing that phenomenon more commonly as in the knee-jerk reaction of, let's cut, let's bunker down? Is that the more common phenomenon that you're seeing within your circle, or is it more so the other of, let's cut and also let's sniff out opportunity and prepare for the pounds?
Yeah, look, I think it goes in waves, right? And the people that my mentees, who are extraordinary founders in their own right, I mean, they have a very natural reaction to it. And usually they're first-time founders. So what they'll end up doing is getting a bit frozen by, shit, what does this mean, right? For me and my venture and my identity, my brand, all the things we've built up together. And once they get through that initial shock, it's just, okay, so what do we do now? And my job in speaking with anybody who I mentor is, I want 1 hour to save you 1 month.
Yes.
So if we have this conversation and the advice is what I've just sort of suggested to you would be, yes, think you can work out your cost base in like an hour, right? So let's just do that. I don't need to be there for that. You work it out. Now let's work out the 50 people you're about to start talking to. and the methodical nature you're going to go after that. And that's kind of where people need to sort of get to quickly, because I don't want them to get to that point of view like in 4 months' time. Because like every day is of the essence. Like every conversation you have, every kind of way you frame stuff with people to try and get some insight from them, it's really, really important. And people will say they are busy. What they're actually saying is they're really tired, right? And you just need to find a way to compassionately reach out to them and say, hey, listen, do you mind if we have like a 5-minute call? Of course, it'll probably go longer than that, but I'd like to catch up. I'm the CEO, I'm the founder of whatever X venture, and I know you'll be hurting right now. I may have some ideas about how we can help. Are you open to it? And very rarely with that kind of couching is the answer no, right?
Right.
It might be a week or 2 weeks down the track, that's fine. But you schedule them and you get there. And the other interesting thing here is by facing outwards of your organization and having those conversations, it's, I don't want to say inspiring because it's more than that. It's sort of one of those things where you just feel energized by not having to have things run around your head.
Yeah.
Right? If you have the chance to sort of go and spend 4 or 5 meetings a day with people to sort of say, look, I just want to talk to you about these ideas that we have, inevitably their context and their perspective will give you so much more energy compared to what it was that you had waking up that day, which was, how am I going to explain this to my team? Where do I get my next round from? How do I retain the customers that are saying, look, it's too expensive right now, I've got to cut out. Like these are sort of downward problems you've got to face into anyway. But wouldn't you want to be having conversations that at least counterbalance those kind of things you've got to deal with, as opposed to just being in a negative all the time? There's something about that which I think is important. But it swings and roundabouts, right? Like we've spoken before, both of us, about when we've had sort of dark days in this job and in different ventures, and it does get really, really hard. But if you're able to surround yourself with people that can sort of fight to get you back up that curve, or at least just give you humor to sort of to circuit break, I mean, you're making money, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Just to, and this is a thermophysics thing. Any system or any body can only have a finite amount of energy. The only way it can have more energy is through an external force. Emotional energy is very much the similar kind of thing, which is why something like this show allows for that to happen, and being part of, even as just on the consuming end, other people's shows or other people's content, even in that form, has been very helpful for me to be able to go, wow, I'm not the only person that's going through this. I remember reading this one very powerful Medium article last week or the week before. One of my buddies, Mike Rhodes, who was also on the show, shared it, and it was a founder in I believe in SF that was getting ready to lay off 161 people in his firm, and how he was bracing himself for that, and he shared his entire process. That in and of itself, even though I don't know the founder, never spoke to him, energized me and gave me perspective in such different ways.
Yeah, I mean, you got to fight for perspective, right? This is the daily opportunity, and some days it's really, really hard. But having access to good content, having access to good people, not feeling as though you're taking away from their time, that you're being respectful of their time, and that you are genuinely reaching out to get some help with stuff, and also just the idea of, even if you've never done this before, thinking about what could you create yourself or with a friend that allows you to think not about your business, right? There is something about this notion that, I'm easily operating 18 hours a day, right? And we're doing this sort of 6 day. We're home, like we've got 2 young girls. We're homeschooling. We're working. My wife works. She's got a big corporate job, and we are running. We're running hot, right? And it's hard, and it's fatiguing. And the weekends are just like blurs, because I think we used to call it Monday and Tuesday. Now we're just calling it day, and then it's just night. And you've got to try and keep it together, because the kids are looking at you all the time. I guess the thing then, in my mind, is, all right, what can you create, right? Which is so deeply for you, right? It's not for your kids, it's not for your friends, it's not for your partner. What is the thing that would give you joy? And so, can I give you an example about what we did about that about 4 or 5 weeks ago?
Absolutely, please.
So a good friend of mine, Mel Rosenthal, who I've known for years and years and years, she's an executive coach, probably asks the best questions of anyone I've ever met. Her job is essentially to hold the mirror up to people and say, is that true? Right? That's her job. Now, she's very well versed and very well written. And I remember on one Wednesday saying to her, you know what, and this is before everyone went to wholesale work from home. So this is probably about 3.5 weeks ago. And I said, you know what, I think we could share some tips from working from home, because you know all these people that sort of go to offices every day, all those people on those trains, on those buses, on those bikes, they're going to those big towers and they're used to doing the same thing, different meetings, different people, different challenges. But it's kind of the same sort of stuff. Most of them could work from home for 1 or 2 days at a time and sort of go, yeah, that's fine, I can do that, no problem. But 90% of them have never actually worked from home like as a thing. So I said to Mel, look, I think we could do a podcast. I reckon we could make it 5 minutes a day. And I reckon it could just be tips about how you work from home more effectively, right? Just a bit of humor and just some things that go back to basics. So within 3 days, thanks to the help with some guys from Whooshka, who are a great Australian podcast platform, freelancers we found on Fiverr, we pulled together a podcast, and now we're up to episode 30, and we deliver at 8 a.m. every morning, and it's 5 minutes, we batch record, and that is our creative thing. Now, Mel's never done a podcast before. We bought some kit, we sort of set it up, and it's a beautiful additional thing to do. Now, there are some people in the world that would sort of go, you know, listen, that's a distraction, right? You should be running your business. You know, yeah, I'm running my business for the other 16 hours of every day, right? This is what I'm doing for an hour a week. And this becomes something that lives on in a different format. So my sort of advice to people is feel good about the idea of creating something just for you. Give yourself that extra dimension of creativity, because it will keep your brain in pretty good shape. And it just gives you a chance to sort of explore. And anyone who's an entrepreneur right now, you came to this game, it was opt-in, you came to it to build something, you are trying to build something. It was never going to be easy. You know it's not easy. But that's not to say that you can't keep on tinkering with something on the side, right? And I think it's important, because that's the love that you came to this sport with. And it would be a travesty if you lost that because you thought that you have to be working 100-hour weeks to keep the company alive.
That is so powerful, because and very timely, selfishly, personally for me right now, I had this exact same talk with one of our team members, where the entire core theme of that talk was, are we forgetting to play? Are we forgetting to even to find joy at work, where arbitrarily, as founders, as team leadership, as pod leaders, or whatever type of leadership role you have in your company, you place certain stakes on, is the client happy? Are my team members engaged? All this other thing. And it becomes, that was Andre Agassi's book. I hated tennis, and I hated every single match that I was playing, because it stopped being a game for me. It just became the drudgery of work. So that what you just said there is very profound and very timely right now.
Yeah. And it's like, it's just a lot of fun, right? Like you laugh about how much you don't have it together, and that's good, right? I think it's one of those things that people aren't, they're thinking they're too tired to do it. But if you started, you'll find that there is, excuse me, there's an infectiousness about that. And I think in times like this, if you're going to play the long game, you need that, right? Like, how else are you going to survive?
Yeah. And herein lies an interesting thing. Even during warfare, squadrons still are able to laugh at things and have fun and go through the day that way. Sure, some very, very horrendous things are happening, but yet it still has to normalize to a certain level at some point. Yeah. Which I'd love to throw to you now. I've been in the fire service. You've been in the military. How much of that are how much of that life is there a transferability to your current incarnation of being an entrepreneur in this chapter of your life?
Every day.
Wow.
Like there are two things. I mean, so many lessons learned in different chapters of life, right? But the thing for me is, and I've had the huge fortune to be led by some incredible people. Or actually, I've just had the privilege to be able to follow them, right? The first one is, well, lessons wise, you will only ever be a good leader if you're a good follower first.
Yes.
Right? That's kind of the bottom line. And I'm all about trying to assemble teams where the capability is so much higher as a consequence of recruiting those people and bring them into a business to work together and making it all work together, that I could leave the room and decisions still get made and things still work really, really well. So I think it's the follower leader thing, for me was a big deal. And when you get a chance to work with some of the most amazing soldiers anywhere in the world, you just see a different level of human. You just go, I just can't help but want to aspire to be just like that. So that's the first one. The second one is, and I was reminded of it about a year ago after reading a book, one of Jocko Willink's books about extreme ownership. We talk a lot in the military about intent, about the commander's intent. And that is about expressing what you need to see done to achieve the end game. And as founders, we are thinking about our venture, our proposition, our mission so much that we think we're saying it a lot. Often we're not saying it enough. And if we think we're a broken record, you are just getting to the threshold at which you've got to keep telling it more, right? So this idea of refining intent and sort of making sure that's really clear stays in my mind a lot, because there are many times where I haven't done a great job of expressing that intent. And I've looked at it and sort of gone, why the hell did that just happen? Until I've realized it was my lack of intention and expressing that intent that actually made this all fall down, right? So that was the second one. I think the third one, look, for me at least, is that I learned that humor is the ultimate free and infectious circuit breaker. And in the Australian military, we pride ourselves on dark humor and just having a crack at each other and just being able to laugh. And it's almost a prerequisite that you're able to bring some kind of humor. And if you can't, then you will be made the point of humor, right? So
right.
I'm coming to this expecting to laugh, right, and have a good time. And you could listen. I mean, a good example of this is a podcast called The Unforgiving 60. It's operated by two guys who are close friends of mine, Tim Curtis and Ben Pronk. They're former Special Air Service Regiment officers who left and went and did MBAs. And now they sort of just talk to people who are really fascinating folks. And I got to tell you, like, there are many times I'll be out running, I'll be listening to them as I'm running, and they will be having a crack at each other the whole time. And I just have to stop and laugh because I can't breathe at the same time. And it's a very good reminder that humor must be brought to the floor so that your team can see that there is a circuit breaker, so that hopefully washes off onto them as well. And, I just think it's just so fundamental because people just want to be happy, right? Like,
yeah.
Bottom line, they just want to be happy. So there is a time and place for all of it, but look, follow a leader, making sure that you've got good humor and making sure the intent is there. They are the transcendent points that I'm pretty sure I practice every day, subconsciously or intentionally. But how about you? Like, what do you remember taking from the fire service?
Very similar to you. The follower leader is something that we practice now with my team, and servant leadership being the key piece. To understand that to lead is to serve and to serve is to lead. So it's a very virtuous cycle. Right. And absolutely being able to, we call it repeatedly repeat yourself, being the next thing. It's non-stop. And I like what you're saying about intentionality. That's a big lesson for our leadership team to learn in the past 3 months, the start of this year, really. It's by the time you get to a certain point as a leader within a company, and the number of people that you lead multiply out, I mean, we're a 50-person team now. You have to be so intentional about what you say, because you can very unwittingly make a throwaway sentence that someone in the team can hold so much gravity to.
Right. Yep.
Right. Which is such a funny, and I would doubt it's coincidental, but there's so many comparisons to parenthood, where I've had Finn say to me sometimes, right? So I've had Finn say to me sometimes, yeah, remember that a few years ago you said this one thing, and that's why I don't do this. And I'm going, oh my God, that was a joke. I didn't mean anything out of it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm totally with you. I mean, we see that here at home. We see it at work. I've seen in other circles that you say something that you think is a throwaway line, you act, you quib, you smirk at something, you make unintentionally unkind sort of gestures towards something, and that sticks. And it's really super tricky. So I think you just got to be on guard. But at the same token, this is not about being so rigid that you can't be human, right? Like you've got to be you. And at some point, you're hoping that 80% of the people take the intention, operate well against it, and that you just know there'll be some people that just don't get it, choose to act on it a different way. And that's just part of the learning journey.
Absolutely. And I think because of the background that we've had, the phrase mission critical takes on a very different meaning to most people as it would you. As an example, incorporate what they call learning and development allows for greater efficiency and greater output with your workforce. For in the military or any type of essential service, like whether it is civil defense or military offense, L&D is boot camp, where if a trainee or a recruit doesn't get trained properly, it's life or death.
Yeah, that's it. I think I've always struggled with a lot of the corporate vernacular around these kind of things, which have been they've tried to adopt them from a militaristic point of view, but you got to be careful if you've not done it and you use it. I think there's
you're kind of play acting, aren't you? By that point.
I'm not sure that's going to work out well.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're about to get to the tail end of this now. We have never done this on the show. I'm a big fan of a big part of this show has been inspired by Inside the Actors Studio, which is a long-standing TV series on Bravo TV, hosted by the late James Lipton. Okay. And James Lipton very famously, at the end of every show, asked the same 10 questions to his to his guest, which is rapid fire. And he was inspired, and James Lipton, the late James Lipton, was inspired by Bernard Pivot, and that was an old French show. So here we go, rapid fire. I have 12 to 13 questions for you. The first one being, and we can go rapid fire here. Phil, what is your favorite book?
Oh, so many books. Can I do two?
Sure, let's do two.
I'm going to go with Fathers and Daughters, who was written by Madonna King. And then I'm going to say Eyewitness to Power by David Gergen.
Beautiful. What is your favorite word?
Yes.
What is your least favorite word?
No.
What turns you on?
My daughter's smile.
Amazing. What turns you off?
People who are unkind.
What sound or noise do you love?
Waves.
What sound or noise do you hate?
Badly played instruments.
And I'm conscious of the fact that you're home right now, so this might be a past question. But what is your favorite curse word? Amazing. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
I think being a doctor, or the guy who was running international rescue on Thunderbirds. I could go either way.
Got it. What is the greatest or most profound piece of advice you've received that's helped you grow into the person you are now?
You can't be what you can't see.
What does greatness mean to you?
Leaving the greatest net positive impact on the world at the end of your life.
Beautiful. And our final question, if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
You've got a lot of friends waiting.
Amazing. So beautiful. I love this. I'm gonna keep this thing going. I love that was very, very insightful. My man, I appreciate you so much for your time. Do me a favor, stick around. I'm gonna make sure I outro the show, and then we can catch up for a little bit. I want to make sure I say thanks properly. And
Awesome.
Beautiful. Everyone watching, thank you so much. Before we go, in fact, Phil, you've dropped some really amazing stuff here today, and it's been such an honor. Always, like I claimed to you guys before, for you guys watching, always leaving clearer and wiser before the conversation starts. I would love for everyone to have that opportunity that I have. Where can they go find your content, your podcasts, your resources, etc.?
Everything that I put online lives in one place, and it's my blog, which is philhsc.com.
Amazing. philhsc.com. Everyone do go check it out. 350 plus blog posts, a whole bunch of podcasts, and always clarity and a lot of cut through. Phil, thank you so much for your time.
Awesome, man.
Let's get to the outro. That was Phil HSC, everyone. Someone who I hold really near and dear to my heart and wise in so many different ways. If you like what you saw today, please do tag a friend that needs to see this. Use the hashtag GG Show for any of you that want to tweet this or do any type of share. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the show. I will see you next episode, and it's going to be a really amazing one because for those of you that are here, we've got Ezra Firestone joining us on the next episode, which I'm super pumped about. Thank you for your attention. As always, I appreciate your attention. See you next time.